just in any case. So it is only, as you can see, it's recording my screen because I'm screen sharing. I hope I am. And it's recording what it gets out of my webcam. So it probably won't even hear you, probably won't see you. Don't let that affect things, please. If you share stuff in class, I might like repeat it for the video. Obviously, the thing on my mind is the first draft of this literacy narrative. Oh my goodness, how in the world can we do that? How can we get it in by today, by the end of the night? And what happens if I can't? So in my mind, everything is about giving you the tools and advice and tips about ways to kind of craft that. Writing is hard because there's so many parts to it. There's all of the like thinking of the ideas and then how do you organize them? And what kind of style did I use? And did I transition there? Or do I have to use like a format? Do I need a work set? There's just so much junk. So in my mind, I feel like the practice here is kind of getting used to managing more and more of those things. But of course we can't do all at once. That's why we do it in phases, because we do our best the first time. We revise and fix up more of those things for the second one, and then even maybe another round of revision after that. So a couple reminders things first. One, I'm hoping that by now you've seen the very brief commentary I gave on your proposal and sample paragraph that you turned in last week. If you haven't seen it, it's under the grades section in Canvas. I've heard some people say on their phones they cannot figure out where to click, how to find it. I have the Canvas instructor app, so it's different than the Canvas student app. So I can't say exactly what to do. But I know that on a desktop, it's under the grades area. So if you're like, what, you told me something? As always, let me know and I can find it for you and share it another way. Oh. Why would they do that? Oh, no, that's really helpful, thanks. Another thing I just want to draw attention to, in the important stuff module at the top, I added a link to our writing center. Does anyone know where the physical writing center is? Have you seen it before? I mean, why would you know, right? But it's a room in the library on the ground floor. And I asked if you've seen it because sometimes when I walk by the library, like, you know, underneath the thing, I look through the windows and you can see a big sign that says the writing center is open or the writing center is closed. And they just have like a sticky note they add there. Essentially what the writing center is there's smart students who have passed at least RHET 102. So they're at the very least a little ahead of you. I think right now they're all juniors and seniors. Their pictures are up here. And there's students who sit in there and essentially like wait for you to come and talk to them, wait for you to come talk to them about your writing. And you can do that at any stage in your writing for any class. So you can go in and say like, Dr. Seven's expecting me to have a draft by today and I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. Can we look at the assignment together and talk it through? And they'll say, yeah, sure, great. Or you could say, I wrote this sample paragraph last week. He didn't really give me very good responses to it. I'm not quite sure if I'm on the right path. Can we talk about that sample paragraph? And they'll say, sure, great. You can have a full essay and you say, I think this is really good, but do you think it's an A or an A+? And they'll say, sure, great. You can do that in the physical space. They have 2 monitors, so like let you kind of stay distance. They're always wearing the mask, there's a fan, etc. You can also submit stuff online. You can like just fill out an online form, attach a document and say, here's what I got. And they'll respond within 2 business days. So business days, right? So if you send it today, you might not get a response till Tuesday. That's just kind of their promise. You might get it today, kind of depends how busy they are face to face. You can also schedule times to make sure they're there to talk to you, or you can schedule like a live Zoom-y kind of thing using this WC Online system. I direct the Writing Center. I hire and train the students who work there. So if anything is ever wonky about it, or if anything is ever awesome about it, you can let me know. But it's on my mind. I'm always like, come on, guys, go there. It's nice, I swear. Just so you know. So the way I see today going is most of class, I want to talk about that I wrote it essay, that LN Cara with comments. So hopefully you've got that open down under week 4. The end of class, I want to spend the last 10 minutes prepping how we're going to do peer review, like what we're going to do with each other across as we read each other's drafts in small groups. I've been talking for a while, so apologize if I'm like really loopy and say things funny. Can we start just by reading this? Just giving you 5-6 minutes to read as far through this essay as you can. What you'll see here is it's really messy because I've added a ton of comments here. And these are not the comments that I gave Cara. These are not the comments that I gave to the real student whose name wasn't actually Cara. These are comments I wrote for you. I read the essay and thought, what can people who are writing the literacy narrative for the first time learn about what she did well and what she did poorly? So if you're a really fast reader, sure, go ahead and read the essay and read what I said at the same time, but I'm only giving you 5 or 6 minutes. So maybe this time, try to read it through first and just kind of ignore what I wrote. And then if you have time, go back to those later, but see that as a resource to help you draft. So hopefully all of your masks are over your nose, please, and give it 5 or 6 minutes. Go for it. If I can pause the video here. So I feel like sometimes when we talk about writing, the first thing I do is just, did I like it or not? And then maybe from that I can kind of dig into why did I like it? And maybe that will kind of turn into more like academic sounding words. I don't know, but I think our gut reactions matter, whether we're talking about a sample or whether we're talking about just anything we're reading at all. So I guess I just want to start with, did you like it and what did you like? Or if there's anything that kind of bugged you or drove you crazy, what is that too? So what did you like? What did you not like? I'd love to hear at least one little thing from everyone if we can. So I'm going to kind of like be doing like, all right, one from you, one from you. What do you think? Do you want to hang out with Cara? I don't know. Catherine said.
I liked the way that it flowed from, like the whole story flowed of the book being found, which caused her to start writing differently, which caused her to write that way in class.
Yeah, flow is sometimes like a confusing, or like, what does it mean? But you defined it really well there. Like an event led to another event, led to effects, led to that. I'm going to kind of take some notes up here, partly for the video here, but I'm going to put that as like an organization thing, because like there's a story followed by the effects, followed by another story, etc. You know, so those effects. I think that kind of boom, boom, boom feels right to me. Yeah. That very last line.
Yeah, I like that ending kind of.
Tell me why, and that's okay. I've gone back and forth on it over the years.
Well, she kind of like leads into it in that last paragraph. Like, well, throughout her whole thing, it was like talking about how she would do poetry as she was growing up, and never wanted anyone to see it. And then she went to like that. She shared it with her one class in high school. And realized like other people liked it. So it's like that last paragraph she's talking about how she like how she like openly does poetry, doesn't care what people think. So I thought that like that last line was good.
Yeah. So it ends in a way that really I'll say that focuses on our literacy. You know, it's not exactly the phrase you use, but it feels right because it kind of takes all of the stories and all the story after story after story that Catherine mentioned, and now we're getting somewhere on the main literacy, wrapping it up. To me, I think my problem, I agree with you in terms of the organization of how it works with the whole essay. I just thought the last line almost felt boring. You know, she's so poetic, she's so stylistic throughout. She's got all these images, she's got so much stuff. And then it's like, I enjoy poetry. To me, it's like, it's a sentence that you can almost read as like sarcastic so I thought it was a boring final line, not a wrong final line. I don't know if that helps out. What else? What else did you like or not like? Yeah, Lindsay, what do you got?
I kind of like how she gave like examples where she was writing like she thought I did my writing as a child and I was way there, so I'm broke. I don't know, I kind of just like how she gave examples to give a visual.
Yeah, where's that word toy? Like, as a child, so it's like and I guess we'd call it a simile, right? Like I don't care if we know those words in here or not, but she's thinking about how can I help my reader visualize this or feel it or understand it through, I don't know, expressive language, images. I don't know. She's using similes and other poetic language, I would say, to help us feel it, to take it up a notch, right? That's part of your style grade for sure, which is why I think she's doing that throughout. And wouldn't it be weird in an essay about poetic literacy? That's what this is, right? It's how did you learn to be a poet, and then what context helped or hurt you along the way? That's why it fits this assignment. What if she didn't? What if she's like, guys, I promise I'm such a poet, but she's not writing poetically at all? We'd be kind of like, what? It's almost like a risk. It's almost a risk thing to write about a writing thing. I have had, I think only once, maybe I shouldn't say this. I did have someone once write a literacy narrative about how they used to be really horrible at like grammar and spelling and commas and stuff like that, and how they've really gotten really perfect at it these days. And the whole essay was like so prideful, but it was full of grammar and spelling issues. Like the sentences actually were making mistakes that the student didn't realize he was making. That I think can kind of hurt your credibility sometimes. Don't let that scare you. It's okay. There's always a chance for draft. So I got 3 left. Theo, Andrew, Grace, what are you thinking? Anything you liked or didn't like to add? You can say pass if you want, but if you got something.
I think your style comments are interesting. I feel like you definitely like a specific style.
Oh, it's hard, right? I don't want to be that guy, but I kind of am.
Right.
What kind of specific style do I like?
I'm sorry, let me figure out what I'm actually talking about here. There was one thing. It was about. Here we go. No one will ever know the true meaning for sure except the artists themselves.
Yeah. Someone in my last class was calling me on that one. They're like, that's like the best sentence in the whole paragraph.
I feel like they're really narrowing in on the idea that they're trying to say before that. And I know you say that it's not, oh wait, maybe I'm thinking something else.
No, it's okay.
The important thing, her developing literacy, but I think that's what she likes about that particular brand of literacy, is that yes, literacy is about communicating with someone, but that's what she finds so beautiful about that type of communication with someone else.
I'm going to write that. Yeah. Also uses. I'm going to put it on Jackson's comment, but it's kind of the same thing. So at the conclusion, she uses her conclusion to say.
This isn't necessarily how
Yeah.
So I think it helps illustrate how she yeah, this is all about learning a way to communicate, but there's something with someone else, but that form of communication inherently has a sense of, can be interpreted differently, and that's part of what this author likes about it.
I hear you, and that's
that's not
this,
really what she goes into. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Not really what she goes into before that, but
well, and what's
off topic, but I don't think it has nothing to do about it, or is just repetitive.
I agree with you, and I'm sorry I keep stepping over you. Actually, what someone in the last class was 100% on your side, and they were helping me see that line about no one will ever know the true meaning in some ways echoes Catherine's point. It echoes the progression of the stories. That we get a story about you were in trouble for writing. You were in trouble. You thought your poetry was good enough to hide the family secrets, but it turns out you didn't hide the family secrets. Then followed by a story of like a teacher who's like, is she gonna like my poetic decision? No. Followed by a decision where she was poetic again in senior year, and this time it worked. So the idea that those stories of poetry being read so differently by different people, maybe that's what she had in that line. I'll tell you, when I read this the first time, I didn't catch that. I wasn't thinking of that kind of connection. This can get overblown. This can be too much, but you almost wonder if that was her intention, and if that was, she didn't want us to miss it. Could she add like a, just as the three people who read my work, as I discussed above, saw things differently. No one can really know about, maybe that's too heavy-handed, right? Maybe you don't always have to be obvious like that. But
Well, and then I feel like if I want to make that argument, then I have to go back and rewrite it and see if that argument fits into the rest of it too.
yeah, no, I hear you. No, thanks for sharing that. That works. Grace and Theo, up to you to add something or to pass. Okay. Pressure
I
on
can
you.
go back on the ending, like,
Yeah.
I enjoy poetry.
Mhm.
At first I thought that's a really powerful ending statement, but then as I went back and read the previous sentences, I do think it's kind of redundant, it's kind of unnecessary. Like, I think the sentence before that, letting my life through artistic poetry is a good enough ending. Or if she could have added something more to that.
To me, and you saw another place where I was critiquing this kind of what seemed to me like a repetitive style. I'm saying that as someone who does that all the time. When I'm writing, I have a habit of I'll write a sentence and then I'll say, in other words, or that is, or I'll put a dash and I'll say it again, or I'll just say like this. And I've had a lot of people tell me, you're overdoing it. They got it the first time. So part of the reason I'm critical of that is because I'm self-critical. One thing that I like. What I like that you two, not that you two, this class is focusing so much on the conclusion and so much on the big picture organization, because I think these are things that I suspect you all might need help on. Not you specifically, but I suspect someone at this phase in the writing. Right now, you've done all your brainstorming. You've written a proposal. You've written a sample. You've kind of got, I hope, really strong idea of what your literacy is and maybe even what stuff you might write. But maybe it feels very clear to you that having a bunch of stuff and a bunch of notes and a bunch of ideas is not an essay. How in the world do you turn that stuff into an essay? And I actually chose Kara's essay because I think it gives us some answers to that, specifically in an organization. I don't think I need to kind of write what we've kind of been saying here, but this idea of a story followed by a paragraph that says, here's the effect of that story. Can we actually look at that? It's the first paragraph on page 2. If you just scroll it through really quick. I guess I should be thinking of my video watchers. Who's gonna watch this? I wouldn't watch it. We've got a 3-paragraph intro, really. We've got 3 paragraphs about the Red Notebook story. And she pauses finally after a full page and is like, all right, let me talk to you what that did to me in my life. Let me walk away from the scene, the dialogue, the zooming in. Now let me zoom the camera back out and talk about once I had learned that my Red Notebook's poetry wasn't good enough to hide the lies my voice did, I was determined to better my writing skills. And here's kind of some in general. So, and to me, it feels like a zoom in of a story followed by a zoom out of summary effects. And then it's times 3. All right, next paragraph under that. When I was in the 5th grade, guys, don't underestimate the importance of timestamp phrases like that in a literacy, because you're going to be jumping back and forth. We got to know. We're going to be wondering how old you are. I've seen so many literacy narratives where someone says, the teacher looked at me, she said this, she did this, and they go on for a page and a half. And finally she says, I turned to my best friend who also turned 16 the same day I was. And I'm like, turned 16? I thought you were 3. Like what happened? So clues can help us here. When I was in 5th grade, zoom into the story of that teacher. Then you go down to page 3. This, I think, is, you saw, I think it's an organizational issue. She finishes the scene, and then she kind of starts zooming into the effects of that again, which to me is really surprising. I thought if you take a risk with your 5th grade teacher, and she says, don't be poetic, I would expect then I shut myself down. I decided to never tell anyone I was poetic again. And instead, her response, yeah, she does, in some ways, practice other types of writing styles. She starts somewhat taking that advice, but she still cares about poetry. She digs even deeper. let me just write that down on ideas. I think she constantly does what we didn't expect, or at least what I didn't expect. I think that's cool. It makes me want to keep reading. And then, of course, after that stuff, you know, all throughout middle school and high school, again, a timestamp. In general, in summary, but then it took one high school teacher to change my perspective. Shoot, we're in dialogue. The second we're in dialogue, scene. Of course, we get that scene. She wrote it. She's so proud of herself. And her essay conclusion is, it kind of blends the effect of what that final positive scene had on her, but it also kind of concludes the whole thing. So I want to say like the final effects paragraph also wraps up the whole essay. I'm going into all these details to encourage you, because if Kara was like, I don't know how to write an academic introduction and conclusion for this literacy narrative. None of the ones we've read have kind of done that. Well, how am I supposed to do it? I think this lets you off the hook. I don't think Kara's essay would be better if she started like this. Can I make it up? Like, throughout all of time, people have written poetry. How people learn poetry is sometimes a mystery. I, however, have a story to tell of my poetic literacy. It only came through time, and as you'll see, there were times where it almost got shot out of me. But by the end, this is a story where I showed my poetic literacy and found pride in what I could do with words. Next paragraph. What the hell is this? If I saw that, I'd be like, I think you can cut it. Please don't be offended if I suggest you cut your first paragraph. This is a common thing, not just for students, for anyone. You write a first paragraph of anything, and it's kind of like, this is my best shot right now, and then you write the rest of it. And often by the end, I find the paragraph has got to be changed or cut or something. I'm not saying you have to start with drama. I have looked at sample essay paragraphs of other people in here who didn't start very dramatically, and we kind of decided that's actually kind of cool. But I think it's safe. A story where there's dialogue, where there's surprise, where there's some expectation you're building. If you don't want to give us the kind of like shock paragraph, right? She's very purposely cursing a couple times in the first paragraph to kind of get us like, look at what I'm doing in my essay. Sweet. If that's not you, what is you? You know, what emotion could you make us feel?
So, while this is an essay, it's also a narrative, which to me is a little conflicting.
Yeah, I see that.
For example,
And the way I would say that is that it's like creative writing, but it's also like academic writing. I think I mean the same thing by that, but I feel like those are intentional.
Yeah, I get that, but like, for example, we still kind of should have a thesis, but like, there is no real thesis statement. And like, even if you just look at either any of the paragraphs individually, you can't come up with a thesis.
Yeah.
Even in a general thesis sense.
Totally.
And then also just another question with.
And I want to answer that. I will keep going.
I'm sorry. I just
No, you're good.
So like another thing that seems more essay to me is like, I mean, all the quotes obviously aren't under like their own paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
Is that normal? They're like more narrative-y things. Because she goes from her own voice to someone else's voice, and like,
I would say.
not mean that it takes its own paragraph.
I would say that if she, like in the first paragraph, for instance, mom speaks in dialogue, and then she speaks, but then she speaks later in dialogue. What do you mean, mom? I think I didn't mark it, but I think that's a mistake. I think whenever a new person speaks in dialogue, in quotation marks, you should start a new paragraph, the way that you would see in any published writing.
Okay.
I do agree. I think it's not because it's right. It's not because it's a rule. It's because it clarifies. It makes you say like, I can visually instantly see this is a new person. Yeah.
Okay.
I would think of that as kind of a style thing because it's kind of a grammar punctuation, which is part of the style. Right? So please. But when she's speaking her own thoughts as like the writer the college writer, the 18, 19-year-old Kara who's writing this, not in quotation marks, then I think those thoughts can be mixed with quotations by other people in the same paragraph. That's okay and allowed and almost unavoidable. Every time a new person speaks dialogue in quotes. Let's go to the thesis. We didn't talk when we read Alexei Barrientos, Felsenfeld. We didn't talk about if we found a thesis statement in there. I don't think we did. I don't think there tended to be a 1 or 2 sentence summary, often in the last sentence of an intro, right? Kind of like a typical place to kind of say, this is what I'm talking about. And yet I would say most or all 3 of those had some kind of a thesis implied. This isn't making life easier for you, but I would say that as long as I know that you're answering the assignment correctly, I'll say in a second what that is, I don't think you have to have a stated thesis the way she does. The way that I think the way she doesn't state a thesis is okay. For me, this essay is all about how you learned something slowly over time and what helped you or hurt you as you were on that learning path. So like on the assignment, it says like your thesis is this kind of context helps people in general and helped me learn that or not learn that. But I don't mean that it has to be a statement. So if it was a statement for her, I think her thesis would be, help me out, that the combination of family trouble and teachers who do and don't get it can make the path to learn poetic literacy alternately bumpy and smooth.
I guess
It's the
even if
closest
it's
I could
not
get.
just a statement, you also can't just figure out a paragraph and get that from that. You have to look at the whole essay.
I think you do, and I think that's okay.
That's okay.
It is. The problem will come, because I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself later. The problem will come if I read your essay and I'm like, I can't figure out what you're learning here.
Yeah,
So let me tell you an example from another student who's in a different class. I think 10 a.m. on Wednesday. I'm just starting to learn where you guys are. And I don't think she'd mind me saying that. Her story, she started saying like, I've gone through a lot of hard stuff. She's like, I'd had this kind of job in high school. I was taking care of my mom. I went through this, I went through this, I went through this. And I said like, what's the literacy here? What are you learning? She was like, I was just like learning how to be a human. Man, life is hard. I'm learning how to be a human. And I was like, and I think this is somewhat related to the thesis question. So I was like, is this a literacy narrative? And finally, she's like, I've got it. It's perseverance literacy. And I said, tell me more. She's like, when I was going through a lot of that hard stuff early on, I was not persevering and I didn't know how. I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I was like walking through the hail, like things were just bad and I was letting it beat me down emotionally and I just wasn't succeeding. But then there were a couple things in my life that happened that flipped it, that allowed me to start learning how to persevere even when I didn't want to, how to get out of bed when I didn't want to, how to do this. And I'm going to tell you the story of those early times, but then what flipped for me and how I've learned to continue to persevere later. And that answer was gold for me. I was like, yes, okay, there's your thesis in a sense. There's at least your story. There's at least your learning journey. This is now about illiteracy.
I guess I feel like that's still a learning, a growing narrative. I don't see how that's a literacy narrative because it doesn't have anything to do with communication with someone else.
It's a stretch. It's true that it's a stretch.
We can stretch it a little. I mean,
No. It's a stretch, but because of that way she answered, it was okay, and I think it's going to be okay in the end.
I feel like I'm putting a lot of rules on myself.
I think maybe it's hard because literacy is. In some ways, this would be easier if I said, everyone, you have to write about how you learn to read and write. That would make it simpler in some ways. And I have been stricter about that sometimes in the past with other semesters. But what if you just don't have good stories about that? What if you don't have any good memories? What if you don't remember? So I'm stretching it to allow those things almost as like a backup. It's like quite a lot of athletes write about sports literacies. In general or a specific kind of sport. And at first I was like, is this cheating in some way? And the more and more I've read those, the more I'm like, no, this is really similar to how we learn something slowly over time because context that helped or hurt us. So I think it can fit. I hope you guys are feeling good. I think this is a good conversation, but please jump in if you want. Like we're having this in public here on video and in class. so that it will help. No, they can't even hear you. It'll be on YouTube as a unlisted link, by the way. When I post stuff on YouTube, it won't. No one will happen across it. It will only be RHET 101 students. So we're at 11:35. I have one or two more things I want to make sure we do say about Kara's. We got to most of them because you're smart, good readers. Could we talk about style just a little more? We praised some of her style. We praised her similes or poetic language that Lindsay brought up. Did you notice that some of the style comments I made were about kind of stricter grammatical things? I'm going to give you, Andrew's going to hate this. I'm going to give you another unhelpful guideline in that I think you may break grammatical rules in this essay when the reader is pretty sure you did it on purpose. What does that mean? How are you supposed to know if you did it? I don't know. Let me give you an example. Can we go to the very first paragraph? Maybe you saw the verb tense stuff I talked about. So after the opening quote, her eyes gleaming into mine. Okay, she stands waiting for my response. Present tense. There she is right now. I don't know what to say in the present tense. I am stunned. I'm stunned in the present tense. Okay, pause there. Part of me is impressed by that. Part of me is like, this is a story about the past. I would expect you to say, she stood waiting for my response. I didn't know what to say. I was stunned. Sometimes though, we write and talk about the past and the present. If I was telling you a story casually, I might say, okay, so I'm on the bus and this guy gets on and he says to me, hey, we fall into the present when we talk in a natural, good, nothing wrong with it way. So it can be really engaging to tell past stories. So I thought she was doing it on purpose. I was like, ooh, Kara, playing with the power of like making us feel like you're a little kid again. But look how the paragraph ends. She shouted again, past tense. I stood there, past tense, staring at her and stuttered, past tense. She forgot how she started it. She didn't say she shouts again. I stand there, or I am standing there, and stutter, or I am stuttering. So I think, I'm just gonna type this so we have it. In Kara's, verb tense shifts in ways that look accidental. Because there would be no good reason to start a paragraph in one and flip it in another. It doesn't feel right. Can I tell you that that's a really common issue for first drafts of these? So, it's one thing when you read each other's drafts, I think we can definitely help each other. Now don't get me wrong, can I kind of make up a fake paragraph that uses some of both? Like I might have a, Dad yelled, I'll put it in italics to show like I'm in my essay. Dad yelled at me and I just stood there, past tense. And then you can kind of add like a time, a time phrase like I was drawing attention to. When I think about that now, when I think present tense about that now, I realize in the present tense that I was really scared, past tense, and didn't know past tense what to do. So sometimes I draw attention to this and people kind of take it so far. They're like, oh, my whole essay needs to be in past tense. Even when it doesn't feel right. That's what the professor said I have to do. There's still that basic logic about tenses that you learned in second grade. I get it. But you will inherently be bouncing back and forth. You'll be saying this happened, and now here's what I think about it. And this happened. Here's what I think about the thing that happened. And it's complicated. So can I just ask you, some point in your drafting, pay attention to that. Clean it up. Be purposeful. Personally, I can't think this way as I'm drafting. When I'm drafting, I have like I've got to get everything on the page. I don't know if you do this. Sometimes I'll put like, this Star Wars soundtrack is 65 minutes. Until the Star Wars soundtrack is over, I'm silencing my phone and putting it in a drawer. I'm turning off the Wi-Fi. I'm not going to open email or social media. And I force myself to write for those 65 minutes. Doesn't always work. That's always when someone like knocks on the door, right? You can knock on my door, please knock on it. But you get it, right? If I'm doing that, if I'm pounding out words to get words on the page, I don't want to pause and be like, I wonder what that is. Let me kind of start looking at verb tense online, and then it makes me look up this other thing online, and then it makes me look at this other thing, and all of a sudden I'm out of the groove. So do what you got to do to stay in the groove, but then maybe go back. The other thing that I'm not going to type up here that you saw at the bottom of page 1, I commented on that sentence, how the clouds were white and fluffy, is technically a fragment. But it's one that to me seemed more purposeful. It seemed less problematic. It seemed like she was breaking the rules to sound like a poem. So I didn't, ding her for that. It didn't hurt her style. One more thing about two quick things about format, and then I want to talk about what next week. One thing you notice, she has a title. And it's not just literacy narrative, Kara's literacy narrative, how I learned poetic literacy. It's a creative title. I don't know if you got down to the last page. It's a title that harkens to stuff she says at the end. That next to last paragraph repeats the phrase, I wrote it. She was only able to read it so well because I wrote it. She could blah, blah, blah because I wrote it. They did this because I wrote it. It's an important phrase in her essay. I bet she read the whole thing and didn't even know what her title was going to be. I honestly don't remember if this is how it happened. Maybe, and then she was like, what do I do? What do I do? Ooh, there's an important phrase. So title should be creative. It can be playful. It can hint at content. It can hint at the meaning. It shouldn't be straight up descriptive, like my literacy. It is required. I do want to see a creative title for this and for every big essay in the class. Titles suck. I hate writing titles. I sometimes just try 2 or 3. You're going to get comments from me and from other people. If you don't know what to do, say, what's a good title, everyone? Or even better, here's 2 possible titles which you like best. Last, the rest of the format grade is essentially, does it look like an MLA style essay? If you look at the actual assignment page, and that's way up under week 2 or under assignments, the page that like has the flag on it, that's how you know it's like the main one. Down here under format, I give you a couple links to places to suggest how to set up your document. One is just like in general, and one is like, here's how to do it in Google Docs, like exactly what to click. I don't care if you use templates, I don't care if you use other stuff, but essentially, I do want to encourage / require you to make your essay look kind of like hers. Have that last name page number, have the 4 lines in that order, have the whole thing double spaced, have a title that's centered and has the big words capitalized and it isn't bolded in any way. Sometimes in Word, it wants to give you a little extra space every time you hit enter. Figure out how to get rid of that. If you don't know how to get rid of it, ask me or Google how to get rid of extra spaces between paragraphs, right? There are 8,000 YouTube videos on this. My point isn't that I care so much. The point is that at some point, the Modern Language Association, this group of scholars, they were like, we feel like we're getting distracted by all the differences in the essays we're reading. We feel like yours is in this font, yours is in this font, yours double space, yours single space. And I open it and I have this gut emotional feeling before I even look at the content. Can we just simplify and standardize so that we focus on the content? That's the point. For you all, I'm only asking this not because I think it matters that much, but because you will have readers who think it does matter. You want your college essay professors to look at this and have that gut emotional reaction of like, oh, look at them, they followed the rules. They've seen 9 million essays. They know what the rules look like. So show them that you can follow a couple basic spacing page number stuff. If you don't know how to get the page number up there, take 5 minutes and learn it. It's a little part of your grade. It's not much, but it's a little bit. So where are we going? Well, maybe you've noticed that next week is up in Canvas. This is week 4 right now. Next week is 5. Is that crazy? Week 5 in school. Yeah. And there's a page there called How Will Peer Review Each Other's Essays? And there's one homework assignment. It says add 4 side comments and 1 end comment to your group members' Google Docs before class. What does that mean? Well, hopefully today, you're going to upload a full draft. By the way, if you need more time, you can have more time. I'm not going to hurt your grade if you turn the full draft in late. The problem is the later you turn it in, the less likely you'll get comments from your group. Because I'm not going to be like, if you turn it in Thursday night, I'm not going to be like, hey, everyone in their group, quick, this person finally turned it in. You have to rush and get, no, I'm not going to put that pressure on them, right? So earlier you get it, the more likely you'll get comments. So you do that in that assignment. What I'm gonna do later this afternoon and tomorrow morning is I'm gonna go into that Google Doc you share with me, and I have all of your Gmail addresses. Hey, you shared them with me in week 1, that was on purpose. And I'm gonna share them with the people in your group. And it's gonna be the same group that we used last week when we did that Discord stuff. So they're typed here on that page about how we're gonna peer review. Same people as before. So before I see you next week, anytime before 11 a.m. on Friday, I want you to go into the 3 other people in your group and at least 4 times, more if you feel like it, add comments just like this, little side comments that are designed to help that person do better. That's all there is to it. Now I give you some advice about how to do that. I'm just gonna let you read that on your own. The basic idea is that sometimes I want you to praise, sometimes I want you to question and critique, sometimes I want you to write about the style and the grammar and the mechanics and stuff. I think the key here is even if you feel like you're no good at writing, you can still be a good peer reviewer. Like you can still say, for instance, hey, I'm not speaking to someone who is great at intros, but I know when I read yours, part of me wondered like if it was like the best way to build tension, because it seemed like later you got really suspenseful and interesting, and up here, I don't know, it seemed like you weren't quite into it yet. Is that right? You could say that, right? You could ask a question about how it felt to you, even if you couch it with like, I'm not sure. To me, this paragraph felt like it kind of came really suddenly. Have you considered using a transition there? I don't know what that would look like. Maybe this one, maybe that. What do you have? So ask questions. Give suggestions by questions. If you feel like you have too many ideas, you can even couch that by turning them into questions, right? But please praise too, but praise specifically. I loved when you did that because it was so good, because it affected me this way. And I bet you could even do that later in the essay too. So 4 times you write a side comment. 1 time at the bottom, I want you to write, it says an end comment. That's essentially like a very short paragraph. I'll show you how. I've got an example here. I just don't have time to go over it. Can I read you my end comment really fast? Overall, so this is at the bottom. Like you go to the same Google Doc and you've already typed comments as you read. And you say, overall, the things I liked the most were this. But you saw I made a lot of critical comments about this, which I think is your biggest need to revise when it comes to your support. Essentially what you're doing is you're making all those little disparate comments you made up there kind of flow together into a narrative. Like, okay, I hope I didn't confuse you. Let me pull it together. And then in class, next time I see you, the whole focus of class will be on Discord-based peer review with your groups. We can talk about if we even need to be in class. I do want it to be live. I don't want to be at the same time. So I think class is great. If you're like, hey, this is a hard time for me to show up, I'll be okay if you say, I'll be there live, I promise, but it'll be from somewhere else. But I want you to then use Discord during class time to clarify, to flesh out, to say, I made a couple comments, did you not get that? Did that make sense to you? And to give you a chance to talk back. You know, Jackson can say, hey, Lindsay, I read your comment and I really appreciated it, but what did you mean here? What do you think I should do differently? And then maybe everyone else will say, oh, here, you could try this, try this, try this. A way to kind of take it to the next level through kind of conversation. I'm doing it on Discord partly because it's more socially distanced. It's harder to kind of have like in your face conversations these days, but also because there's a record. If you type in Discord, then later on you're like, what did Grace tell me? I have no idea. It's there, it's saved. You can go back to it.
Do you want these like, are we putting little text boxes in the margins? Or are we like just putting stuff in between parentheses?
My suggestion is to like literally add a comment like this. I know I'm in Word, not Google Docs, but in both of them, it's Control-Alt-M, but there's other ways to do it. There's so many ways, but like a thing like that, like a Control-Alt-M. This is my dream. Blah, 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 blah. But also in Google Docs, you can just kind of like hover over something after you highlight it, and there's a little plus, and there's insert comment.
There's tools.
There are lots of tools, but use the tool ideally. I'm out of time. So I know that's so much I'm throwing at you, but I feel like you've got this. Remember, the stakes are not that high. If it looks like you're pushing through, you're doing your best, you turn something in, that's enough for us to respond to and help you out. And we can do it. See you later. Oh yeah, I'm recording.